In preparation for the release of Rise of Skywalker, I'm reviewing each of the movies in the Skywalker Saga. This is part 7, so today we're talking about The Force Awakens. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your take on The Force Awakens. Also, as I go into this, there's kind of two books that have been resources that have really helped me throughout this entire series. One is called How Star Wars Conquered the Universe, and the other one is one that I actually listened to while doing this series from Bob Iger's kind of biography, The Ride of a Lifetime, and he talks about the acquisition of Star Wars and everything inside of it. You can get either one of these books for free if you sign up for a free trial for audible.com at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. You can get a free audiobook of your choice plus a free 30-day trial of Audible if you sign up for audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. Both of these books are fantastic. I love both of them. I think that they are must-listens for any Star Wars fan. You can get them for free at that link down below in the description. With that said, let's get started talking about the backstory of The Force Awakens. So after the release of Revenge of the Sith, a bunch of us kind of assumed we're probably never gonna get another Star Wars movie. George Lucas in interviews kind of gave conflicting answers as to whether he had future plans for Star Wars movies. He'd kind of be definitive, no, I'm kind of done with this, I'm getting too old to do it, and I don't trust anyone else. Other times he'd be like, yeah, I've got these ideas for more scripts. And so it felt like he was saying two different things, but given his age and how long it took him to do the prequels, you're like, I don't think we're ever going to get more Star Wars movies. And afterwards, he also started kind of working on the Clone Wars series. He started writing scripts for a live-action Star Wars TV show called Underworld, and they wrote like 60, 70 scripts for it. He was trying to get that done, but it didn't seem like making a movie was a priority. But running parallel to this, a guy named Bob Iger took over at Disney and had a radical new strategy for how Disney was going to move forward, and part of that was basically acquiring franchises that were successful. Basically, let's buy hit makers and let's make that what Disney does. And so then right after he was hired in 2005 in kind of his top role there, he acquired Pixar, and they had a long partnership with Pixar, but he started like actually working to buy Pixar. And then after he bought Pixar, he started working to buy Marvel. And so he gets two of these massive hit makers, and he starts thinking, what's the next one? And the obvious thing was Star Wars. So he starts a line of conversation with George Lucas, who wasn't exactly looking to sell, but he also wasn't entirely opposed to it either. And Lucas had been kind of working behind the scenes thinking about what would he do for 3 more movies, and started to put some ideas on paper. And he started kind of running all this through his mind. He wanted to close a few things out, but he actually started warming up to the idea of selling Star Wars. So he goes out and lines up the person that he wants to run Lucasfilm, which is what Disney would actually be acquiring, Lucasfilm and the projects that were inside of that. So he puts Kathleen Kennedy in charge of it because he'd been working with her for decades and thought she was the perfect person to do it. And he starts lining up a screenwriter to work on some scripts for them to do more Star Wars movies if this happens. And eventually he goes to Bob Iger and he says, let's do this. I would love the deal. I think he said the Pixar deal. And they start having this kind of back and forth between everything about the exact price, and there was all sorts of negotiations, and George Lucas wanted a certain level of involvement but didn't want to have a job, and so he wanted creative control without, having to do any work inside of it, which if you're going to buy Lucasfilm, you probably don't want that. And so a lot of back and forth. Eventually they settle on amount in the $4 billion range. And part of it is that George Lucas said, I've got these scripts. I want you to take these outline treatments I've been working on. I want you to take these under consideration. Like, we will take them under consideration, but we can't promise too much more than that. And so they make the deal. George hands over these scripts. The timeline is a little bit unclear, but it sounded from Bob Iger's book that George Lucas was the person who picked Michael Arndt to write the script for the new Star Wars movie. He'd done Toy Story 3 and a few other things that had gotten him some praise. And so then it's sold, and Michael starts writing a script for episode 7. And this kind of goes on for a while, that he's kind of working on this script and the story. In the process, they hired J.J. Abrams, who'd been doing Star Trek at the time. So for a bunch of us, like, what? The guy doing Star Trek is now going to do Star Wars? And our minds were kind of blown, because it was literally, he was about to do the press tour for Star Trek Into Darkness. They are like in the final stretch before the release of that movie, and they announce he's going to do the new Star Wars movie. And whoa, I can't believe this is happening. So that movie comes out. He gets to work on Star Wars. A year later, it's not working with Michael Arndt. And so they end up having to let him go. JJ brings in Lawrence Kasdan, writer of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and Raiders of the Lost Ark and many other things over the last 30 years. Bring him in to work on the script for it. They get to work. Eventually they have a sit down with George Lucas like, here's what we're doing. What do you think about this? George looks at it and realizes that they took his ideas and just kind of tossed them out. They did not run with his ideas for the movies. And if you actually, there's some videos out there, the articles that kind of show you what George was looking to do. There are a lot of things that are inside of them. And even especially as the series has played out, this trilogy is now playing out, you can see where they went, okay, we like this idea and we like this idea and this one over here. But the actual structure, the flow of it, the things that George was focused on, they went, we don't want to focus on that. Well, we want to play a little bit safer, but we like some of these ideas. And so we'll kind of cherry pick scenes and characters rather than the actual flow that you had in mind. So George wasn't crazy about this, and he's made some less than diplomatic statements over the last several years about the way he felt in the way that they handle his ideas and his property that he created. And some of that's fair, some of that's, he sold it. He wasn't going to do anything with it. It didn't look like he was going to do anything with it. And there were some problems with the prequels. So then JJ runs with it. They put their movie out there. It gets glowing reviews when it comes out. I mean, it's like, I believe over 90% still on Rotten Tomatoes, made bajillions of dollars. It is still the highest grossing domestic film in the United States. It's the one that has made the most money. Globally, it's not. Star Wars is more popular in the United States than it is globally. So it's a movie that was a massive cultural event that made a whole bunch of us excited about Star Wars again. And then, over the last few years, Disney Star Wars has dwindled some of our excitement about some of that stuff. But that's a little bit of the background on where it came from. Once again, you can find out all the details on that stuff in How Star Wars Conquered the Universe or Bob Iger's book. If you want to get those for free, you can get it at that link down below in the description. With that said, let's move on to the good. And one of the best things about this movie is that it's inherently designed to feel comfortable and familiar. They were trying to make a movie that just brought back those feelings of nostalgia from watching the original trilogy while you were growing up. That's what they were going for, and I think they did a really good job of evoking those emotions. Right before the movie came out, they put out this trailer, and they have Han Solo come around the corner with Chewie and say, "Chewie, we're home." And that's kind of what the movie was going for. That vibe, that experience, pulling that out of us, and it did a good job. Now, granted, when we get into the negative, that has some consequences that come along with that, but you feel like you're going back to what we loved, the thing that almost all of us universally agree were some strong Star Wars movies before it got all divisive. It brings us back to that. And some of that's even part of the problem with the prequel trilogy is they didn't look quite right. Whereas they had this lived-in look in the original Star Wars movies where just grimy planets and stuff like that. And then you get to the prequels and everything was just so clean and pristine and computer-generated that it just so much gloss and shine to it that it didn't feel like they matched up quite right. Just because they're on green screen, the lighting and shadows and everything, it didn't look like the same universe. It looked very different. Just literally speaking, what you are seeing doesn't feel like it matches up quite right with what you saw before. And you could make the argument that's just technology changing so things look different. But when everything is clean and pristine, that's a big part of what makes the worlds not connect quite right. And as soon as you get to The Force Awakens, it once again has that grime to it. It has absolutely the best looking visuals of its time. The special effects, obviously the picture quality is crisp as can be, but it has that grime to it, that lived-in universe where you just feel like you're in a real place. And right in this opening scene, Stormtrooper gets shot and puts blood on Finn's mask. You just feel stuff like that just makes it kind of a little bit nastier. And you didn't get a lot of that in the prequel. So just visually speaking, you feel like you're looking at Star Wars. And then, of course, where it gets into the more negative side to it, that it does kind of follow the template of A New Hope pretty blatantly. Another thing that I think that JJ is very good at is he makes movies that are roller coaster rides. That, you know, the movie starts and you got a little bit of wind up and then you're just kind of doing these ups and downs, and it's almost about every 10 minutes you have some big exciting thing, and then you come down, slow down, deliver just enough information to get us to the next place. You go up the hill and then we're going up and down and around the turns and the loop-de-loop. And that's what his movies feel like. They just have a very brisk pace to them, to where you have the character moments between these big rides, and then it pauses, character moment, big adventure. It's a chase, it's a monster, it's a shootout, it's a space battle, and it's just going through all the different twists and turns that you could put in an adventure movie, a spy movie, a Star Wars movie. He does all of them, and you just kind of feel like you're moving at this breakneck speed. And for that reason, I think that this is probably the most fun Star Wars movie. Just would say fun. You know, Empire Strikes Back is fantastic, but, you know, it's a lot of it's a little bit more serious, a little bit more romantic, more kind of emotionally potent. It has fun, but I wouldn't say it's the most fun Star Wars movie. The second half of A New Hope is a ton of fun as well. The first half is a little bit slower, though. And so this is the one that I think, just kind of from the beginning to the end, you have, you know, Finn and Poe with their banter back and forth. You have Rey and BB-8. Then Han Solo shows up and he's kind of doing his thing, and Chewie's kind of being a little bit whiny in the movie, and it's kind of funny. And then you have big battles. And so it just has that fun roller coaster ride from the beginning to the end. And I really do think that that's what JG does really well, and why he was a pretty good pick to do this movie. Or actually, I mean, for a lot of people, us thought that he was kind of like a top 5 pick to do it. And I didn't think it was possible that they would get JG because he was doing Star Trek. And then they announced him, was like, okay, well, that seems like as good of a pick as you can get, because he does kind of the more Star Wars pacing. He took Star Wars and put it on Star Trek, is basically what he did with the Star Trek movies. And so now he's doing Star Wars with the Star Wars vibe to it. Speaking of fun, I thought the characters here were actually quite fun. The way that they're designed, I think that they just bring an energy to things. We just kind of walk through our early characters. Poe Dameron is just kind of designed to be the charismatic type guy. Things about him make him kind of the Han Solo of this one, because he's the pilot that's kind of got swagger to him, but he's a totally different character than Han Solo. And he has the charm, the charisma that just make him really likable. He has a good energy with whoever he's bantering back and forth with. It just gives it a nice vibe to it. And then you put Finn in there, and Finn, I think, has maybe the most naturalistic energy to him, naturalistic excitement to him of any character in any Star Wars. Because you have excitable characters, but they feel like very Star Wars-y type characters. He just feels like this guy that's kind of excited to be on this adventure and responding, kind of a person that's like just trying to get out of there and smart, like talk his way out of things, where he's not very good at talking his way out of things. And he just has that energy to him that when you put it with someone that's charismatic and kind of knows what's going on as Poe, real nice dynamic there. BB-8, I wasn't sure if we were just going to get R2-D2 2.0, but he's not that. He's a little bit more explicitly jokey in the way that they use him, and just even the design of him with the rolling ball stuff, all like it's kind of a cute design. And so just a nice addition of a droid inside of it. Rey, I think, is a character that has the issue that and we'll talk about this later, but they haven't found ways to give her conflict yet. For whatever reason, they haven't given her conflict, but I think she's I like her. I just wish that they would use the character a little bit better. But her as a person with interacting with others, I enjoyed that a good bit inside of it. And then our legacy characters returning, it's just, you're seeing a more mature Han Solo kind of reflecting back on everything. I think leads to some very powerful moments inside of it, especially when you're like on the Millennium Falcon. They're flying through space and they're trying to figure out their mission. They pull out the card and have all these questions about Luke. Did you know him? And you have this final moment where he's like, I didn't believe in any of it. I was just as skeptical as anyone. Thing is, it's true. All of it. It's like really profound stuff from where he started to where he is now. And it's not like, he suddenly like this turned into a Jedi or a monk himself or anything like that. He's just a guy that was the skeptic that's like, yeah, I guess it is all true. Still the same guy. Still kind of vibe to him, but he's like, all the crazy stuff, man, universe, the existence, it's all crazy. So you kind of see him a little bit different. Likewise, you see him as the father that's trying to care about his son and have the estranged wife that he still cares about, but just, they've been torn apart by the events of life. And I think just some things inside of that carry a good bit of emotional weight. It's the sort of thing you can only do when you have a character that we see over 30 years. And you see them 30 years later, and you can see the life change that happens, and I always enjoy that with movies. And back to J.J. Abrams and the roller coaster rides that he creates. One of the things that makes this movie very entertaining and fun is the fact that J.J. is very good with a lot of his action sequences. He has a very dynamic style to the way that he does things. Probably the best example of that in this film is the escape from Jakku, which is just a very cool little Millennium Falcon flying around, avoiding TIE fighters, going through his ship. Very cool little sequence, shot and staged in a way that makes it exciting, and you're just seeing things that are like the best of special effects, and they absolutely hold up. I mean, it's only been 4 years. It's the best that it goes, so we've reached that point in time where things are photorealistic, but you look at the prequels and things can look cartoonish. This stuff just looks fantastic. But they also found little ways to do different things with the Force. So you have Kylo Ren stopping lightsabers, or not lightsabers, stopping blasters being shot at him, and all sorts of things that just expand the universe, give us exciting new sequences with the best of modern technology, and just stuff that keeps moving. The other thing that JJ does with this sort of stuff is he has a certain way that he does humor. He has these, it's almost like Michael Bay jokes, but they're J.J. Abrams jokes that are a little bit better than Michael Bay jokes. In this movie, some of them fall flat and some of them are pretty great, where you have Finn being like, we'll use the Force, and Han Solo going, that's not how the Force works. It's a really funny line that fits really nicely inside of it. You get a number of those nice one-liners here and there that I thought just landed really nicely. The battle at Maz Kanata's place, that's another really cool little battle sequence, especially where you see Poe flying around and like picking off guys on the ground. And that's where I think this movie just, it keeps giving you entertainment value. It never has any lulls to where you can get bored in the movie. It's just moving. If we're talking, we're gonna have a joke, or we're gonna have something really potent happen where you're having this character moment with Han, and then we're having another action sequence, and it keeps doing different things on that roller coaster to get you from the beginning to the end. It's exciting, and of course you do have some really impactful emotional scenes inside of it where, I mean, you have Han Solo dying at the hands of his own son, which is pretty brutal stuff to put inside of a movie like this. I had that one spoiled for me going into it. The comment sections are the worst, and so I'd seen it and I was like, it wasn't even an article about Star Wars, just a random comment section. Ben is Han Solo's son and he kills him. Excuse me. Kylo Ren is Ben Solo and Kylo kills, whatever that was. It was like this, like only less than 10 words, and I read it and I was like, oh crap, I'm pretty sure that's real. So early in the movie when it first introduces and is like, your father, I was like, oh crap, I know what's gonna happen at the end of this movie. But I mean, I don't know, it's the best scene. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but the idea that they put it in there's some potent stuff inside of it. If we're trying to set up Kylo as this incredibly conflicted person, having him kill Han Solo makes him a person that we certainly have large feelings towards. But in general, it's a movie that, as I said, it's fun. It's a nonstop roller coaster ride, and it's a return to the feel of Star Wars. We feel like we're in a classic Star Wars movie, and that's what kind of, it's just a comfortable movie. Maybe that's the way to best phrase it. From there, let's move on to the bad. And the obvious problem here is that this movie follows the template of A New Hope way too closely. And I don't need to walk you through all the obvious parallels to A New Hope because they're just so overt, and it's like, well, we're not on Tatooine, we're on Jakku. I mean, it's just so many things that just tie exactly to A New Hope, and they just kind of took that template and it's like, let's swap this out, let's swap this out. And for all the things you can complain about with the prequels, what they did well is they did something new and different. You could say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be making a Star Wars movie that seems to be very targeted for kids because of Jar Jar and make it all about trade negotiations. That's probably not a good idea. But it was different. And he was expanding things and making it bigger and different and going to different planets and different types of locations and using technology to see things we hadn't seen before. He did something different. This movie, in order to give us that sense of nostalgia, that comfortable feeling, that vibe that we got before, it just really overtly went for, let's play it as safe as possible. We'll just go back to the first one. And we're going to do that with new people and change some things out. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, but it certainly is something that holds the movie back from just being the best of the series. Like, it's a big thing that's like, you played it really, really safe. Like, did Rey need to be on basically Tatooine 2.0? Did it have to be a desert planet? Well, of course not. But they just chose something, just felt so familiar, so comfortable on all of it. And as we kind of get into some of the other parts of this, it even gets to the point in time where some of it just doesn't even make a lot of sense. Like, they wanted to have a Death Star in it, so let's do Starkiller. Starkiller is this Lucas phrase that's been out there for a long time. Let's finally use Starkiller in a movie. So they make this base, and like the plan for Starkiller base, like blow up planets, like it doesn't really tie into anything. They just wanted to do another Death Star. And so we wanted to have another sequence about halfway through the movie where they use their big weapon to do something horrific. And we wanted it to be bigger. So the weapon is bigger, and we're not just blowing up one planet, we're blowing up a whole star system. We're taking out this whole republic. I mean, it's bigger, but it's not even like what the plot of the movie's about. The movie's about getting this map to find Luke Skywalker, and then it's like, oh wait, now the movie's about blowing up a Starkiller base. And that's the stuff about it where you start going like, okay, you didn't even have like a clear focus of your story with the script here. You just wanted to have all the beats of the other movie. And because it moves at such a brisk pace, you don't necessarily notice that when you're first watching it. But when you step back and think about it, it's like, this is kind of a really odd the way that they did this. And along those same lines, the world building is really bad. Like, when you talk about the original Star Wars, the world building is fantastic. Because right out of the gate, you kind of understand the government is evil. There's people trying to fight back. And there's some people out there that have some powers, and you build this thing that you're interested in. But you understand government bad, resistant, or not, well, the rebellion trying to stop them. You get to this, and they wanted all of the language and the imagery of the Empire and the Rebellion, but they didn't explain exactly what this is. Like, what is the First Order? Like, what is this massive, gigantic thing? Because it's not the government, but they have the resources to build a Starkiller base? And when did they start building this? And what exactly is the Resistance? Because it has people that seem to be tied to the government, but I'm not quite sure how it ties into the government. And they're the Resistance, but are they tied to the government? Like, there's so many things about it that you just, they don't explain what any of it is. And then when the First Order is like, we're going to blow up the star system that's the center of the government, you're like, I don't know what that is or who that is, what's being blown up. And now books have elaborated on all of this, and there's things that answer some of these questions, but this is the movie. This is the thing that they put out there as a movie, and it does not answer questions that need to be answered. It's just we're on this roller coaster ride, and because we're familiar with Star Wars, we know that they're the bad guys, these are the good guys, and blowing up star systems is bad, so we need to stop them. But we don't know who any of these people are. It's unbelievably bad world building in what they're doing inside of this movie. And even as you get past The Last Jedi, they still haven't really explained what any of this is or how it's happening or any of it. It's peculiar how little they've explained the government systems and what the First Order is inside of the movies. And like I said, some people are like, well, in this book, you need to read the books. No, you don't. Like, it's bad filmmaking if you say, hey, to understand our movie, you have to read these 3 books over there. Your movie needs to have enough information that it can stand on its own, which the original trilogy was able to do. And back to J.J. Abrams' roller coaster ride filmmaking, it has some consequences of doing that. The dialogue is a little bit too snappy. Everyone's a little bit too witty. Even just kind of watch the opening sequence inside of it. Like, the first 10 minutes is where this stands out the worst, where Poe's talking to Max von Sydow, and each thing that the person says, the person has like a clever turn on it, the way that they say it. And then Poe is talking with Kylo Ren. We're still kind of getting this quippy, clever dialogue that's just a little bit too tit for tat banter for the Star Wars universe. And so it felt a little bit forced in what they were trying to do there. Second one, because he's doing the roller coaster ride thing and he wants to have action sequences at a certain cadence throughout the entire film, you end up with the rap star sequence on Han Solo's ship that just doesn't belong in the movie. It's just like this weird little rabbit trail, and it's only there, really, so that at this little part where there would be a lull in the pacing of the film, that we have an action sequence there. Because as soon as they get off Jakku, from Jakku until after the First Order shows up at Maz Kanata's place, you've got like 30 minutes there without any action. And so suddenly, in this place that would be the lull in the middle of the film, you have this sequence where pirates just happen to show up on Han Solo's ship, and he just happens to have monsters. And so suddenly we're in this space horror film with monsters eating pirates that are the guys from the raid. You could cut the whole sequence out of the movie, and there's only a very mild little piece of like plot that needs to be communicated, that these pirate guys, the guys from the raid, like say on the phone, "Hey, First Order, Han Solo has the Millennium Falcon and he's got the droid." Like, that's the only piece of information that really needs to be kind of spread inside of this. And I'm pretty sure the only reason this sequence is here is because they just wanted some action right there. And the third problem with the roller coaster ride storytelling is that like the whole movie just kind of relies on convenience and coincidence for us to be able to move at this pace at the way it does. It's just all convenience. Poe and Finn escape at the beginning of the movie. They crash land on Jakku on a planet. Like, crash land on a planet. The first city that Finn walks up to, or not city, little village thing that Finn walks up to, Rey just happens to be there with BB-8. And then they walk up to BB-8, and within minutes they're on the run. The ship that they just happen to get into happens to be the Millennium Falcon. They escape, and Han Solo just happens to be searching for them, or like looking for the Millennium Falcon at that point in time. They get to Maz Kanata's place. The place that Han decides to take them just happens to be where Luke Skywalker's lightsaber that was lost on Cloud City when his hand was cut off just happens to be there. Rey just happens to wander down into the basement. We get to the end of it. Finn just happened to have been the janitor on Starkiller Base. Like, that is a lot of convenience. That there's not really a good logical reason that these coincidences just happen to kind of fall together. It happens so that the movie can kind of keep moving at this brisk, fun pace. And, to do what JJ's trying to do with this sort of pacing, you just kind of have to make everything just falls right as supposed to. Just like on a roller coaster, you've got a clear path you're supposed to be on, and it just happens to work that way. But that's not the way stories actually work. A few more things on this one. Kylo Ren, I still don't know how I feel on Kylo Ren. I think there's ideas in the character that I really like, but they just make him so brooding and angry, and with temper tantrums, especially in this one where he's like chopping up monitors with his lightsaber for a joke, that I'm not crazy about Kylo Ren, especially in this movie. And with Rey, they want to do the Luke Skywalker. We want to have our new person that's on the good side, that's discovering their Force abilities. Totally fine with all of that. Even the stuff where people are like, she's a Mary Sue and she's a pilot and she beat Kylo Ren at the end. That's messed up. Like, I mean, Kylo Ren had just been shot in the chest with Chewie's like bowcaster thing or whatever it's called. And they showed us throughout the whole movie how powerful this thing is. And Han's like, I need to get me one of these. And then Kylo gets shot in the chest with that, and he's bleeding out. He's dripping blood. So people are like, how was Rey able to be Kylo? I don't buy into any of that, because the movie explains it. Kylo was just shot. He's in bad shape. He's not in peak Knight of Ren mode. But what they don't do is they don't really give her any conflict that she has to overcome. Like, doesn't have to grow as a character. It's just, she's just already established as being good at things. And that's not bad, but you have to find some other hurdle that she has to get over in her journey to becoming someone interesting. Like, we like conflict that has to overcome things. So if she gets kidnapped and she's like, how am I going to escape? And the big conflict is it takes her 2 tries to be able to do the Jedi mind trick on a stormtrooper. That's not super compelling with what you're doing there. And so even kind of back to the Kylo Ren deal, the problem isn't that she was able to beat him. The problem is that they created a scenario where she could beat him, which isn't nearly as interesting as, what if she's like struggling and he's going to beat it? Like, he's not trying to kill her, but he's trying to win, kind of like Vader in Empire Strikes Back. What if you have that scenario and she's kind of losing, and that's where, in the end of it, Chewie shows up and maybe saves the day. And so like, you're like, she does Force stuff and you have some of the powerful Force moments, but like she has something she has to overcome, that she has failure on her side. And they just didn't do that, which isn't like, that's the thing that I think people are responding to negatively. Not that she knows how to do things. Like Luke knew how to do a lot of things. He was the pilot guy that took out the Death Star where everyone else fell. He too was a Mary Sue in that regard, but they also did kind of give him these arcs that he had faults, that he had to work through some of that stuff. So, and kind of the final stuff on here, because once again, JJ's trying to do the roller coaster ride. He's trying to kind of put every fun thing in there that he can. I think the end battle in the film has just kind of too much going on. The space stuff I don't care about at all. None of it's memorable. You've got Poe on this whole mission to like blow up the Starkiller base deal, and it doesn't matter. It feels inconsequential. It's just happening over there because you care about what's going on with Kylo because he just killed Han Solo. So that's all we care about is what's happening with him. And that's not, you want to care about all the different elements. Like in Return of the Jedi, you've got 3 different fronts for the battle, and I think all of them are compelling, interesting, memorable sequences. This one, like, there's just nothing in the Poe stuff that's memorable at all. So anyway, I've spent a lot of time on the negatives because I think it's easier to kind of expand on specifics with some negative things. But this is a very fun movie. Like there's just more things that's easy to talk through and analyze what doesn't work sometimes, and when something's just kind of fun. It just is. Like, I could walk through all the fun lines in the movie, but that'd be a little bit silly, whereas it's easier to kind of dissect little plot points. I really do thoroughly enjoy this film. Real quick before I give you my final score on this one, tell me what you thought down below in the comment section. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot of different opinions on this one, a lot like we did with Revenge of the Sith. Also, remember, if you want to check out those books on Star Wars, you can get one of them for free if you sign up for a free trial of Audible at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. I loved both of those books. I've listened to How Star Wars Conquered the Universe many times, and literally finished up Bob Iger's book just a couple of weeks ago. A lot of great stuff on the history of Disney over the last 15 years. The Force Awakens might play it way too safe and be too familiar and have a lot of convenience inside of the film, but it is an absolute blast. It is a ton of fun and a very comfortable Star Wars movie to watch. I'm gonna go B+ overall, 8.5 out of 10 on the entertainment scale, and I think that this is a solid addition to the Star Wars universe, if a little bit derivative. Be sure to tell me what you thought down below. If you want more Star Wars content from me, check out that playlist right over there, and thank you so much for watching.